Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 290 of your favourite Formula 1 show. Yes, Knowing Wheel is returning. We're back, of course, to discuss the Japanese Grand Prix. As always, I'm joined by Mr. 183. How are we doing, sir?
Doing well, yes. Good weekend. Obviously, F1 to watch. I was groomsman at one of my best mates' weddings, so that was good fun. Had a good Saturday. And here we are to talk about F1. I was dropping some moves on the dance floor, let me tell you, but we'll save that.
Don't doubt that. I do not doubt. I don't know whether those moves were any good, but I don't doubt that you would drop them.
They definitely weren't any good, but they were fun. So.
Fair enough. That's the most important bit. Obviously, did you remember to get up an extra hour early for the Grand Prix?
I did, yeah.
Good man.
I did, only to then get really confused because I turned on my computer and started watching it UK time 5:58 or something.
Yeah.
And they were still on the grid.
Yes.
And I was like, what have I done here? Am I on delay or have I got their time wrong? But no, it was just because the 10-minute delay to the start really confused me when I was on about 6 hours sleep, if that.
It was because there was an absolutely ginormous poor Super Cup crash. I don't know if you saw it, but they had to do barrier repairs. Yeah. So poor Super Cup went over the catch vent. Driver was absolutely fine, but massive crash.
Oh no, I did see that. He exited a spoon, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh no, pre-spoon.
Oh, I saw a clip. Okay, fair. Yeah, and he went through the bottom of the fence, didn't he, basically?
No.
Mad. Wait, what have I seen then?
I've seen
a crash.
The IndyCar crash?
Maybe. It was a proper car, though. It wasn't like a single-seater.
I have no idea what you watched, but
I don't know what I saw. It was on my Twitter.
I'll
have to go find it after this. I don't know what it was.
Anyway, a little tangent out of the way then, nice and early on. Obviously, we're back to talk about Japan, Jamie, the third race of the F1 season. Of course, now we're in the lucky position where we've got one race in the next 8 weeks, and that's Miami, of all places as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is anybody's idea of a great race to come. It was always, when we go through the summer break, it would always used to be that we return to Spa and hopes would be high, ready for the second half of the season. But instead, no, we get a nice early season break now, and then a return to Miami, and then another 2 weekends off, and then we're back at Montreal. So we're going to have to do a lot of random shows over the next few weeks, but I think it's safe to say, from these opening 3 Grand Prix, we have got a fair amount to talk about.
I think so as well, and obviously it's the new era of the sport, so there's a lot going on in terms of different teams' drivers at the top. Obviously, different drivers have different opinions on the regs. The FIA have another opinion, mostly, from the drivers. And there is a lot going on. Obviously, they're going away and doing a lot of meetings in April. And there might be some rule changes. We don't know. And we'll see what happens in Miami in 5 weeks' time.
We certainly will, and obviously we'll be still, I'm sure, doing weekly episodes, everything like that. Jamie and I'm sure we've got plenty still to talk about with Formula 1 during this little off period. So if you're not already, make sure you drop a sub or drop a follow, depending on what platform you're on. Let's get into the weekend though, Jamie. Of course, first of all, obviously through practice and especially into qualifying, for the first time, I guess kind of in Australia as well, but McLaren seemed to actually be pretty quick.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because obviously we saw them in the Chinese Grand Prix weekend. In the sprint race, we didn't in the GP at all, but the sprint they were okay, but then the GP just obviously wiped that out completely with the DNSs. In Melbourne, Piastri was qualified quite well, just then crashed on his way to the grid. It's hard to get a read on McLaren, and this is probably the first time we've seen them both have clean races. I'm quite positive that it's not going to be a processional Mercedes 1-2, Ferrari 3-4 every race until the rest of the time.
I mean, we literally didn't get that this weekend.
Well, exactly. After me, about a week ago, declaring that in a normal race it should be a Mercedes 1-2 and a Ferrari 3-4 every week. And this race was fairly normal, and it wasn't. So, I want more teams in the mix at the front. I'll make no bones about it. I think it's good to have as many teams as possible fighting at the front. So 3 is generally about as many as you can get in a season because of field spread. So if we do have 3, that's not so bad.
No, exactly, and it seemed like obviously this was kind of, I wouldn't say a perfect storm necessarily, but of course Suzuka probably steered a little bit more into the fact that it's generally considered now that Ferrari might have a slightly better chassis and aero setup than Mercedes. It seemed like McLaren are getting there, because obviously their big issue in the first couple of races was actually just obviously kind of trying to figure out where on earth Mercedes were getting so much advantage through the power unit, wasn't it? So I don't actually think McLaren have built much of a worse car than Mercedes either. And we kind of really got the first look into that as well. So it was kind of that almost perfect storm of McLaren seemed to be getting somewhere. It was a track that maybe helped suit Ferrari a little bit more in theory. And that did mean, of course, with the inevitable Mercedes lack of starts, that actually we could have been in for quite a good race. Of course, it did still end up being with Antonelli on pole. George Russell, once again, second weekend in a row. Some small power unit issues throughout qualifying. But to be fair, I mean, this was something I looked at. Obviously, we'll talk about predictions at the end of the episode. This was a circuit last year that Antonelli proved to be pretty close to George anyway. Obviously, in just his third ever Grand Prix start. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, Antonelli only got pole because George struggled. I was like, actually, I think there was a fair chance he was bagging it anyway.
And I think it was a really positive Saturday for Antonelli because he always looked like he had a slight edge on Russell. And it also, I think Crofty said it on in the race later on, but I don't know, in Shanghai, obviously, there he arguably got pole because of Russell's issues in Q3. He did a good job when he got pole, and obviously then drove off into the distance in the race. This race, he looked there on merit, and especially in the last stage of the race, he was just driving to the distance, not even caring about hiding his pace or maintaining a gap. He was just gone, and it was very much
through the final couple of corners.
It was very Max Verstappen-esque or Sebastian Vettel-esque from their Red Bull glory days, especially Max. I'm thinking like Mexico, I think it was 18, where GP was like, Max, slow down, and Max was like, no. And stuff like that. So I think it was a really positive weekend for Kimi Antonelli. Obviously pole position was a good start. I will say Charles Leclerc, I think, should have got it, but drifting out of Spoon was not the way to go. I think he was on for it that lap.
You reckon he was still a couple of tenths down and the Mercedes was better in sector 3?
He was back, like not that far off in sector 2, and then it just all went away from him. Obviously, in the exit of Spoon, he just had a massive drift, which arguably he wasn't happy with the batteries after qualifying.
No.
So maybe that was an issue he faced.
No, I mean, I think the most important bit there I want to talk about, of course, is the fact you said, back in the Red Bull glory days. Are you saying the Red Bull glory days are over fully?
Absolutely, yes. They have been for 2 years already.
I've been saying this to you, Jamie, and you've refused to believe me.
Well, here we are.
I mean, yeah, obviously, like we said, Antonelli, it was very much, wasn't it, Shanghai? It was kind of like, oh, you most likely got pole because George had an issue. Here it was, yeah, there's a fair chance he would have pole anyway, even if George had kind of got... I mean, it didn't feel like it wasn't that he ground to a halt in Q3 or anything like that, but it did just kind of feel like Antonelli at least had a 50% shot if they both were kind of perfectly ready as well, which is important for Antonelli this early on in the season, because obviously this is where you build momentum early in a campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
That meant he was on the pole. Obviously, George still alongside him in P2, and then we had Piastri in P3. Brilliant effort. We spoke about it out in Shanghai, didn't we? The fact that it was, what was it, a vintage Lando lap, and then Oscar went quicker anyway.
Yeah, that's now 3-0 in qualifying to Piastri, by the way, against our new world champion. Exactly. So, good start to the season.
Exactly. So, obviously...
I think Lando and Max have basically lost it, and they're going a bit mental with these new wrecks. So.
It is always
Did you see the clip on the grid of Lando, for no reason at all, just giggling to himself? I still don't really know why, but it just looks like he's going insane.
It was a cope giggle.
Yeah, it must have been. But Piastri did a good qualifying.
He did. He did.
The Verstappen Q2 lap that I don't know if you saw the onboard for looked absolutely horrific to drive.
Well, he was giving it the full. It had Q3 pace.
It did. And I don't know
It
if
did make
Max
me
had
chuckle.
issues.
Because obviously throughout all the qualifying they were hyping up, oh, Max hasn't been out-qualified or out-raced by anybody here since 2019. I was like, that is the kiss of death if ever I've seen it.
But it's not even the kiss of death. They were only saying it so they can make a point when he qualifies 10th at best.
Or obviously gets out-qualified by Hadjar.
Yeah, but there was never any possibility that Max was going to maintain his winning streak at Suzuka, was there, realistically?
Not sensibly. No, you need a cataclysmic just chain of events to happen for Max to be able to bag that one. But, as we said, he got knocked out in Q2. In the end, actually, hilariously, by Arvid Lindblad in the V-Carb.
Yeah.
But Hadjar made Q3.
He
Jamie,
did.
I said this again a couple of weeks ago. Sebastian Vettel, 4-time Red Bull World Champion. New regs.
I mean, he's not losing to Hadjar, though, is he?
Can't out-qualify by his teammate.
In one race. Well done.
Is it happening?
I know it's 2 races.
Is it happening?
But Melbourne didn't really count, let's be honest. I think if Max quits, it won't be because Hadjar's beating him. Let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah, but you'll say that, but is it actually? I mean, he threw his toys out the pram on Thursday. That was quite funny.
He did. That was not great. I don't think it was pretty poor form to silence a Guardian journalist.
People say that obviously, Max doesn't care about this, that, and the other, and then you get those things where you go, no, Max is still pretty petty.
Yeah, definitely. But there you go. He's clearly not enjoying his time in Formula 1 at the moment. So
no, he's not. If in many ways, I actually want to now see him doing better at NERB 24, just because it might really be that final push that he needs.
Possibly. I mean, he's not really a threat anyway with such an awful car. I think in 27 he'll either be not on the grid or driving a Mercedes. Let's put it that way.
But do you think Mercedes will have him? This is the thing now, isn't it?
Would.
I mean, it's definitely something we'll talk about during our extended break,
exactly.
Now, isn't it? But yeah, it will be fascinating to kind of see how that pans out. Anyway, let's get into the start of the Grand Prix, though, Jamie. Of course, like we said, we hyped up Antonelli there. Brilliant qualifying lap. Really does seem to be competitive against George. If there is one thing Antonelli has been consistent with so far this season, it is terrible starts. And he got yet another one on race day.
He did. And this one was arguably entirely his fault.
I would say they've all been his fault.
Yeah, but you look up and down the grid, often they get the thing where the batteries aren't ready to go yet, which is what Russell had minimally. It's what the Audis have had every race, which isn't that interesting. And Verstappen had it, I think, in Shanghai, both races as well. So, but this wasn't that. So Antonelli just messed up his start by getting loads of wheel spin, dropping to 6th. At that point, you're thinking, well, there's no chance for a race win anymore. Although he is driving a Mercedes, so you never know.
Yeah, it means he's going to finish second.
Yeah, second at worst. It's like back in the 2016 days where every time one of them got an awful start, you'd be like, well, the other one's won and this one's going to finish second.
They'll be second again by lap 10.
Yeah. And all it does is give your teammate a buffer of 5 seconds before you get him back into second place. So, yes. But Piastri took the lead. Did Leclerc get second or was Russell?
It was Leclerc got up to second. Norris obviously pulled off that blinding move around the outside of George's T1, which was incredible. So it was then McLaren, obviously Oscar, Leclerc, Norris, George, Lewis, Kimi early on. Yeah.
And Piastri's first Grand Prix lap of the season, and his first 15 laps of the season were all in the race lead. So that's pretty good. Pretty good going. And he seemed to have it at arm's length, I think, especially once Russell got past Leclerc and Norris within maybe 6 laps or something like that. And then caught up to the back of Piastri, and I was like, well, this is it then. Russell's off into the distance.
He wasn't right up to the back of him, though, was he?
No, he wasn't.
He was kind of just floating between the second and 2 seconds away for quite a while in the end.
And Piastri kind of figured him out and worked out where the battery was going to be useful and held him there. And it looked like that was Piastri's race to lose from there on. Obviously, Russell would have tried lots of different things had the race gone normally.
Yeah,
but
I mean, this is the other weird thing, isn't it, as well, of course, with these battery regs, and Jamie and I were talking about this pre-show as well. One of the, especially obviously because both Mercedes dropped back, for the likes of Leclerc, for the likes of Norris as well, Suzuka, sensibly, there was 2 places where you could use the battery. Down in towards the Casio Triangle or down in towards Turn 1. If you used it into the Casio Triangle, you were then probably going to get re-jumped down into Turn 1, and it basically made it pointless. So, of course, especially by then having those fights with George early on, it then meant that when Antonelli was trying to go back past them, they knew exactly where to defend and how much battery to use and where, because of course it's another Mercedes. So it basically kind of meant that by George being able to find a way through, actually ended up screwing Kimi more early on.
A little bit, yeah. But I actually didn't mind it at all. I think
neither did I.
reminds me more of Kerr's in a way, and obviously it's a way more powerful version of Kerr's. But
it certainly is.
I
think 8 times more powerful.
I think I liked it because it felt a bit more strategic than it was maybe in Melbourne, where it was literally like pass and repass.
Yeah.
Because there were a few occasions in the midfield where someone would use a bit of boost to get close enough into the Casio triangle to fully send it, and then you've still got a bit of boost left to turn 1. So there were, if you could be brave with overtaking, it was still possible. But you couldn't just breeze past somebody.
You did have to work for it a bit more, it felt like, this weekend.
Yeah,
I think
which I quite like.
Yeah, the only kind of bit that was ever different to that is if someone made a mistake. And then it was
but then
pretty much still... I'm not talking like a major mistake, but I'm talking like then if you had to use a bit of battery to defend somewhere else on the lap, it was then a foregone conclusion.
But that's a good thing for me.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah, if you make a mistake in the ground effect era, by the time you get to the straight, the dirty has already put 0.8 of a second between you. So... yeah, I think I'm a lot more positive about the Grand Prix in Japan than I have been about any of the other races so far. Yeah. Qualifying's still a mess. We need to fix it. But
I think the other thing as well that isn't talked about enough with Suzuka is generally for the last few years it's been not helped of course by the fact we've had a couple of wet races, and a track like Suzuka does not hand itself well to wet races because it's basically everybody just trying to stay on the track. But we have had some snoozers here in the last few years. And this race, although had the least on-track action of any of the first 3, felt more like a traditional F1 race, didn't it?
Yeah, which is maybe why I enjoyed it more, because it wasn't just a free-for-all. It wasn't chaotic or anything.
Everybody's overtaking everybody.
Exactly, and I don't like the Melbourne stats, for instance, where it was like
we had
5,000 overtakes. Yeah, because someone's going into turn 3 and someone else is going back into turn 12. It's like I don't know. I mean, I'm too traditional, and everyone loves it apart from me. So who knows?
I mean, yeah, obviously early on then, like we said, obviously George was able to find his way back up into P2. Oscar was just keeping it in arm's length, though. We then started to get through, obviously, the pit stop cycle. I think it was George came in first,
Piastri went first. No, Piastri
was it Piastri, sorry, that went first. Because obviously then it was like, well, actually, the hards are quite difficult to fire up. So it was almost like, obviously, after Oscar, George, and Leclerc pit, Lando, Antonelli, and...
Norris pit as well.
Norris did pit as well, but obviously... Antonelli, Lando and Lewis were like, oh, actually, it might be worth staying out here a little bit longer because the overcut actually seemed to be slightly better than the undercut. Lando then made the call, and then we got really, actually, probably quite staggeringly, the first major crash that could be pinned down to these regs this year. Ollie Behrman, a huge shunt down at Spoon. Lucky that obviously he hasn't suffered a fracture or anything like that, but that was a
massive
big one.
It was, and when he was limping away from the car, I thought that was bad news, to be honest. But 5 weeks off, he might have been fine anyway. But regardless,
especially with how good he'd been in the opening 2 Grand Prix, Suzuka had been a lot tougher anyway. But
and I think he just pitted, so he was behind Colapinto on a new set of tyres. The closing speed obviously was insane, going down to
50 miles an hour.
Yeah, 90k I saw was the difference. And mad. And then there was a small weave from Colapinto, but I don't think it was that caused the crash, because the weave was so minor.
I think, honestly, just wasn't expecting him to be using battery there, because let's be fair, no one really was. Not to that degree. And B, you do tend to kind of arc out slightly in towards Spoon to open up the entry a bit more.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people kind of slating Colapinto that he deliberately swerved on him and things like that, going, I don't really think he did.
No, and it was more like a reaction thing.
It looked like he was surprised when he saw Behrman flying across the road in front of him.
Yeah, well, he went off, didn't he, in respect at Spoon. Anyway, I think he got no penalty for it, so the stewards clearly disagreed with social media. And Behrman massive crash. Was it? They said how many G? I can't.
50
Was it 50?
G? Yeah, but 50 G on a side impact is brutal.
Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely huge. And yeah, I do think that is a problem with the regs because the discrepancy in pace. I mean, not only does it make overtaking a bit wet, especially at tracks like Melbourne or Shanghai in some of the occasions, because it's so ridiculous. It's not an overtake. It's you're in a different league.
It's F1 versus F2.
Yeah, so that is a problem for me. And the driver's been saying the same thing about safety in terms of if you use your battery in a different place to someone else, you can't help but overtake them when you don't really want to.
Yeah.
And that just, if you don't want to overtake them, or you catch them in a
battery.
Or if you catch them in a dangerous part of the track, then you're going to have a massive crash like this. And yeah, it wasn't great, and it wasn't a good look for the engine regs, but I feel like it might be a bit more justification for making a couple of tweaks to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we keep talking about tweaks, don't we? I mean, you've got a few options, don't you? Either you try and say lower how much energy can be deployed each lap. Maybe if you drop it down to, I think it's obviously 8 at the moment or 9 with overtake mode. If you maybe drop that down to kind of 6 and then maybe sort of 7.5 for overtake mode or something. Of course, obviously, there's people far more intelligent on this side of things than either of us could ever be. But I think we will definitely, whether it's for 2027 or later on this year, maybe after the summer break or something like that, we might see a few alterations to it. This was what I was wondering about. Obviously, is it viable, of course? Is there any real way you could actually make the engine, the ICEs, more powerful? I guess they kind of, because let's be fair, obviously they're pretty much up to the limit sensibly, unless you try and throw in, a bigger turbo, or it can obviously, higher pressure can run through it or anything like that.
Yeah, I thought that kind of thing
is what you can do on that side.
It's a lot more difficult to change in the middle of the season. That kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, I would be talking about 27 or something like that.
I think the upshot is they need to be recharging less. And that means you probably need to deploy less energy so that you spend less time recharging.
Harvest
effectively.
Less energy,
yeah. However they do that, I don't really care as long as you can push in high-speed corners, basically.
I think the other big one, of course, isn't it, is got to be, qualifying's got to be flat out. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, it was absolutely a ridiculous own goal as well. And I know, obviously, we're talking about this halfway through the race, but why on earth would you, on the onboard qualifying lap, cut away into 130?
Oh, I know.
They
were doing it.
But it was the fact they then tried to double down. Oh, it was a camera glitch. And so obviously someone immediately with access to F1 TV goes, no, it wasn't. This is the footage.
Exactly.
And
they've done that in every other race. In Shanghai, they were doing it at the end of the straight, weren't they?
Yeah.
It's like they're embarrassed, but everyone knows it anyway.
Exactly.
It's like...
And it makes it more embarrassing.
Yeah. But a super clip down to 130R and the Casio was so bad.
Well, the wild thing was, though, with it, because I watched an onboard comparison, obviously, heading in towards 130R, they were over 30 kilometres an hour quicker than they were last year. But obviously, once they clipped, they were at exactly the same speed as they were last year. People go, oh, it looks ridiculous, the cars are slowing down so much. They're still going really quickly into a corner like that. It's not that they're going through at 60 miles an hour.
No, but it's more about being on the limit of grip, isn't it? And I know you weren't in 130R ever.
Exactly. Or not in the last 25
not since,
years.
The 90s. But it's more to do with the first sector, I think, where you're basically not using the energy because there's no point. And Fernando Alonso said it really eloquently, I think. And obviously, pinch of salt, he's driving the worst current grid. But he's basically saying high-speed corners are now recharge stations.
Yeah.
So the corners where the driver could make the difference in the past just don't really happen anymore.
Well, he also said, didn't he, that half the team, could
half
do
the team could get a car around a lap. Whereas in the past, when you're pushing on the absolute ragged edge in qualifying, you'd like to think that none of the team, apart from the drivers and the reserve drivers, could get the car around the lap.
Yeah, that's the thing, innit? You are watching the 22 best drivers in the world, or not always actually, but you know what I mean.
And Lance Stroll.
Yeah, the best 21 drivers in the world and Lance Stroll trying to go all out. And obviously that's just not what we're getting at the moment, which is still a huge, huge shame.
It certainly is. But that was a safety car. Enough about the battery again.
Yep.
Behrman, big crash, limping away. He's all fine, by the sounds. Obviously, probably quite shaken and bruised. But yeah, that was a safety car which gave Kimi Antonelli a free pit stop, which was
gave
a
Antonelli
shame.
the win.
Yeah. So Antonelli and Hamilton and Gasly hadn't pit yet, nor would Verstappen actually, but Gasly just had Verstappen at arm's length, which is very funny to say.
Basically all day, yeah.
Antonelli came out in first. I thought briefly Hamilton was going to come out in second, but not quite. He was back in fourth. And that was that for the race win. Safety car restart, Antonelli was gone.
Yeah, he basically just the Harry Potter meme, didn't he, on the train? Just waved goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye now. And Oscar Piastri was second, still ahead of George Russell. But George Russell in the second stint just had a terrible day.
Yeah, I think it really got under his skin, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it did. And I think he lost his head a bit when the safety car came out literally half a lap after he pitted, which was a bit of a shame for him.
It happens to me in Creator Series basically every other week, it feels like.
Yeah, but there's a safety car every 5 laps in Creator Series.
It's not been that bad this season, to be fair. I think it's because everybody that maybe isn't as good on F1 has got bored of it now. So it's basically just the guys that actually finish every race, normally.
So why are you still there, then?
I've only ever had one DNF, and that was because I got wiped out lap 1.
Oh, yeah.
I got involved in someone else's mess. Otherwise, I've
highest
always
finish is like third last, yeah.
No. I came 9th at the weekend.
I can't say I've watched much Creator Series, I'll be honest, recently.
Shocking. I beat Ben.
But anyway.
And he was in the championship fight.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to see you have a go. That'd be incredible.
Oh, I'd be absolutely awful. Take me back to F1 2016 with the
You'd get
assists on.
lapped by everybody, and I'm not even joking.
I wouldn't finish. I wouldn't be able to get a car on the track anymore, I don't think.
Fair enough. Maybe that's what we'll do in the break. We'll get Jamie back on F1.
I don't have a steering wheel at the moment, and my Xbox is in a different building, so that's going to be quite tough.
You got a PC?
I do. Yeah. Maybe. We'll see. But George Russell was having difficulties because he got done by Hamilton on the restart, and then about 3 laps later got done by Leclerc down to Spoon because he had a battery issue.
Yeah.
And then he never looked like getting past, certainly not Leclerc. And Hamilton eventually dropped back because I think he was having his own issues.
Again, it was the same thing as obviously with Antonelli earlier on in the race, wasn't it? Because obviously he was stuck behind Leclerc. It was then obviously the Ferrari and the McLaren had enough where you could basically just defend from... Because obviously, again, at the end of the day, Suzuka is still a difficult track to overtake on. It was basically that Ferrari had enough to keep him at bay. George just couldn't do anything because, of course, with the fact they'd already had to come through once, McLaren and Ferrari then knew how much they needed to defend and where.
Exactly. And Leclerc still drove a very solid race to not give Russell an opportunity. But I think George Russell will be kicking himself at how that race unravelled for him. And obviously part of it was not his fault.
Ultimately.
Yeah. But P4, when your teammate's winning, is not great. In a championship, it's going to be basically between those two still, I think. Unless we get a lot of development in the championship, but we'll see.
I mean, McLaren made a big step forward.
I
honestly wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility that McLaren can win races. With the way Oscar ran that first stint as well, I genuinely think now McLaren have proven that they can still win races on pace this season.
But he is about 50-odd points behind Antonelli already.
I'm not saying he's going to fight for the World Championship.
Yeah. But we'll see. It gave me a lot more hope for the season. So hopefully... we get a good one, but we've got 5 weeks to wait until the next race, so
exactly. And then
plenty of time for Red Bull to fix their car and Verstappen to do a mad comeback.
And Verstappen to retire. I mean, like we said, that's definitely going to be an episode. Oh, excuse me, that we need to talk about in the next couple of weeks as well. You know what? Well, we want to do what's it? The 5 winners and 5 losers in F1 2026. That'll probably be next week's show. And then
we'll do a ranking of the drivers so far.
Yeah, and then we'll kind of talk about a few of the bits and pieces like that one.
What on earth is Max Verstappen going to do?
Exactly. Cry is what he's been doing at the moment, which is
quite
he's
just not enjoying it.
I think it is that whole thing, isn't it, in F1 of, it's always seems to be the case that if someone's been on top long enough, they get absolutely screwed for some reason. Yeah. It is a weirdly reoccurring thing in the sport. Of if someone
it's a little bit in the sport's interest, isn't it? I think Ferrari 2005, they basically worked with Renault to make the new regs so that somebody would beat Michael Schumacher. Yeah. And that's kind of what happened, I think, with Mercedes a little bit, because I don't want to throw any conspiracies.
I don't think they worked with Mercedes. I think that's
isn't Susie Wolff on the board of the FIA that made all the changes?
Just W Series. Not W Series, Formula Academy.
She's involved, I think, in the FIA, in the FIA.
I thought that they did get investigated for this, didn't they, a couple of years ago, and she's not given any information regarding this kind of thing. Or no more information that any other team principal couldn't snoop out.
Exactly.
And of course, that's no guarantee anyway at the end of the day that you get it right.
I suppose, but in the past, if one team's been dominant for long enough, they generally try and do them over with a new race.
Yeah.
So you saw it in 2014, saw it in 2022, 2005. So yeah,
even 2021 to a degree.
Well, yeah, they tried to
maybe
nerf
not
Mercedes
to such extremities, but
with the rake stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, it was basically every tweak they made was designed to hamper Mercedes and bring everybody else a bit closer. Which ultimately just then meant that Mercedes and Red Bull were pretty much as far ahead as they were anyway, but still. I mean, yeah, like we said, obviously Antonelli took the win. Obviously, Jamie, did you know this? Staggered me when I found this out. It's the first time Italians have won 2 races in a row since...
Oh, that's going to be a long time. Probably like the 50s.
1953.
Mad.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
Yeah. And he would be the first Italian... I mean, obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves, but there's been no Italian world champion since 1953.
Yeah.
And that would be... To say they've probably got the most passion, historically, about Formula 1... It's quite astonishing that they've actually had very little success.
For most drivers entered still. Obviously, I would have thought behind the UK, behind the US, and maybe a couple of other places.
But yeah, you think about all the teams' histories that have entered with like 2 random Italians in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. That's probably a fairly valid stat, yeah.
Oh, where have I gone? Oh, no.
But yeah, Kimi Antonelli wins the race. Oscar Piastri in second. He says on the radio, when this thing starts, it's pretty good, which I just love. I think I'm slowly becoming an Oscar Piastri fan, which is interesting. Charles Leclerc, good race in 3rd place, I think. He seems disappointed, but I don't know why, because anything better than 3rd didn't really look that on for him, I don't think. Maybe 2nd without a safety car, but I don't know. Even then, he was probably going to get passed by one of the Mercedes, possibly. But yeah, 3rd place. George Russell 4th, Norris 5th, Hamilton 6th, who did have some battery issues, to be fair, but he never really looks at Leclerc's level all weekend.
No, it was an odd weekend, wasn't it? Because obviously Leclerc and Hamilton have been very even so far this season, and it did seem like one where Leclerc did just seem to have Lewis at arm's length again.
Yeah, another Shanghai full storm. What can we say? Pierre Gasly, 7th, best of the rest.
Yeah, another brilliant... Gasly has qualified P7 in all 3 races so far.
Yeah, the Alpine's class
Madness.
and Colapinto is pretty rubbish. And Gasly's obviously developing at a very good level. But I genuinely think it certainly looks less of a handful than the Red Bull. And I would argue it's somewhere in that region of 5th or 6th fastest car at the moment. Sorry, 4th or 5th. 4th or 5th car, with the Red Bull and the Alpine and the Haas are kind of... Yeah. And I know the V-Carb have been pretty good. Lawson came 9th with a broken transponder, like a true Jolyon Palmer.
Yep.
And
well.
Esteban Ocon, whose career was over 2 weeks ago, has got his first point of the season, despite getting screwed by a safety car. So he actually would have done better without that. Nico Hülkenberg, another P11 so far. DNS, 11th.
So good in qualifying, man. It was a real shame for them.
Well, in practice, they look great, yeah. Just didn't come together. And they both got... Then they got lucky with the safety car, actually, didn't they? They got terrible starts and then got lucky with the safety car. But I've never seen a more Nico Hülkenberg start to a season than a DNS and 2 11th places. It's just so classic.
Oh, man. Gotta love it for him. Do you want your quiz, Jamie?
Yeah, go on.
I've only just written down the answers because I just wanted to make sure I didn't end up messing it up.
Fantastic. Lots of preparation.
I know I did have your quiz ready. I just thought I wasn't going to write down the answers, and I suddenly thought I will. Antonelli, Jamie.
Hello.
now
Yes.
has left quite an exclusive club of
Okay.
one-time Mercedes Grand Prix winners. Every driver that has won for Mercedes has won at least 2 races, with the exception of one. You have got to name me every Mercedes driver that has won a race. If you get one wrong, quiz is over.
So someone's won a Mercedes race once.
Yep, only one person has won one Mercedes race once. Every other is a multi-time winner.
So Kimi Antonelli.
Yep.
George Russell.
Yep.
Lewis Hamilton.
Yep.
Valtteri Bottas.
Yep.
Nico Rosberg.
Yep.
Am I being an idiot, or is that all of them from the modern series?
You tell me.
I might Fangio.
Yep.
Is there one more?
Yep.
And it's the one from the 50s who's won one race.
Yep.
Well, this is going to be a stab in the dark then. Wolfgang von Trips.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh. Just throw out a German from the 50s and hope they're right. Who was the last one? Who was it? The guy who won wasn't German.
Nope.
In the 50s?
Yeah.
Is it Ascari? No.
No.
He never drove a Mercedes.
No.
Brambilla?
No. Again, he was
no
only
idea.
Ferrari, I think.
I should have got this. John Surtees?
No.
No, the other British one.
That other
Sterling
British
Moss.
one. Well done, there you go.
Yeah, I should have got Sterling Moss, really.
Yeah,
Never
on
mind.
the British Grand Prix at Aintree. But yeah, he's the only, obviously now with Antonelli swiftly coming in and then leaving that club again, he's the only driver to have won a race for Mercedes that never won a second.
Exactly once. Obviously, if you count the engine supply, you've got Heikki Kovalainen in there as well.
You've probably got quite a few. You might have a few more thrown in there, I guess.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Ultimately, yeah, for just... Actually, who else would you have in that group? I guess Perez?
With the Mercedes power unit, yeah, Perez will be in there.
Perez would be in there.
I'm sure there's loads, to be honest.
Can't be that many, though, when you think about it.
One-time winners with a Mercedes
Ricciardo?
engine. Yeah.
Ricciardo be another
Good
one.
shout.
There you go.
Good
See,
shout.
there's a few in there. There's a few in there. But well done, sir. You got six I think out of 6 out of 7 on your quiz. So fair play,
Great.
there, sir.
Fantastic.
Well done.
That was a fun quiz. Although, yeah, I could have got Sir Sterling.
I feel like you should have been able to get Sir Sterling Moss, but it's okay.
In my head, they were just definitely a German in like 1953 or something.
Yeah.
When Fangio was winning his championships.
You did immediately go to Wolfgang, so I'm impressed with you.
Yeah. Predictions.
Oh.
I think I was being harsh on this season because I thought it was going to be an absolute predictable mess all season. But it's actually not. So
well, you've had first choice in the last 2, Jamie. I mean, what the
only race that was
coming into this
only race that was very predictable was race 1, where you got this to predict first. So it's currently 10-5 to you.
Yep.
I said George Russell would get pole. Not
Incorrect.
the case. Said George Russell would win, which wasn't the case.
1 point though, because he was on the podium. No, he wasn't. Was he? Sorry, 0. Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Kimi Antonelli in second place, which
1
gets
point.
me a point. And Charles Leclerc in third, which gets me 2 points. So that's great.
So 3 points for Jamie.
You said Kimi Antonelli on pole. Well done.
2 points, and genuinely now, Jamie, I went back and checked because when I was stalling, I was checking the qualifying result from last year to see how close Antonelli got to George, and genuinely right then thought, he got pretty close to him last year in just his 3rd start. I'm going to back Antonelli all the way. Because I was actually going to say Leclerc, because I thought Ferrari were going to be better this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think Leclerc could have done, but never mind.
Either
You
way,
said then
2 points.
Lewis Hamilton would win the race.
Yeah, got a bit optimistic with that one.
Got a little bit optimistic.
Yeah.
You said Charles Leclerc would be second, which gets you a point.
Yeah.
And George Russell would be third, which gets you no points at all.
Yeah.
So it's actually 3-3.
It was 3-3 this weekend. I was a little bit disappointed there with Russell. I honestly thought he was going to get Leclerc, and I was ready for you to be so annoyed that I still managed to bag 2 extra points on you. Actually, no, I guess it was still only been 1.
13-8 are the current scores now, so we'll keep that going for.
I guess I've now got to hope that most races this year get cancelled, whilst I've got a decent buffer.
Well, yeah, end of season now. You've won. Congrats.
3 races in.
Driver of the day.
There's definitely a few we could suggest.
Yeah. I want to give it Oscar Piastri, though.
I was going to say Oscar Piastri. Really
I think him or Gasly.
What he needed.
Gasly
I
think Antonelli obviously did well, but the start kind of limits him.
Antonelli got incredibly lucky to be basically handed that back.
It's true, yeah. But he did drive, other than the opening 10 seconds of the race, he drove very well all weekend.
But he couldn't make his way back through early on. I would honestly argue that might have... Actually, I suppose Australia wasn't great either, but I would argue this might have actually been one of Anthony's weakest drive of the season so far. It was just then...
I disagree.
Fair enough.
I think his China weekend generally was a bit more lucky, because at least he put it on pole.
Hey, he dominated China.
I know he did that. He did in China too, but with a bit of luck from Q3. But
so you're saying the race that he didn't win might have been his best drive?
Quite possibly, yeah. He drove right here. It's race rating. I enjoyed it more than I did the first two races.
Interesting.
I know on paper it wasn't.
Yeah.
We've gone a 7 and a 6.5 in Melbourne. We've got an 8 and a 7 in China.
Okay.
So I'm a harsh critic, apparently. I'm actually going to give it another 7, because it wasn't that much better than China. I just enjoyed it more.
I was going to give it a 6.5.
We've just got different tastes. What can you say? That's fine.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think for a Japanese Grand Prix, it was very good, but it's still...
Yeah.
This is the harsh reality at the end of the day, Jamie, that I know I've mentioned it so many times before on this show. Give us a go back at Fuji.
Yeah.
They could have given us a double header with no Grand Prix now in the Middle East. How great would that be going Fuji next weekend?
That would have been top, but yeah, I like Suzuka. I'm glad it's on the calendar, although with these engine regs it's a bit pointless because there's no challenge in qualifying anymore. But that's a discussion for another time.
That's like most tracks now this year.
Yeah, true.
The challenge of qualifying has disappeared. Is that everything, Jamie? I think
we've done well. We'll chat about Max Verstappen quite a lot next time, I'm sure.
I'm sure we will. Jamie's going to be in tears, just like Max was on Thursday.
I'm going to tell Matt to leave the podcast before we start.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you all, though, as always, so much for listening. If you have enjoyed, please make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed, drop us a follow, all that good stuff. Like we said, obviously the next few weeks we are going to be doing loads of random bits and pieces. The podcast is not going anywhere just because Formula 1 isn't going anywhere. So yeah, obviously we'll be back next weekend. Like we said, I think we'll do our winners and losers from the 2026 I almost said 2025. But I guess it's from 2025 into 2026 F1 season. Hopefully, we'll see you guys there.